Hi, friends. Welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 198. I'm so glad you are here. This episode was kind of born out of a conversation that we were having recently in a parent Q&A that we had in the membership community that I run, the Learners Lab. And I thought it was a good reminder that every one of us could use. It's all about balance. Do you struggle to find your homeschool balance, especially when homeschooling neurodiverse kids? I know I do. So we're going to talk about that today. But first, I want to remind you, if you haven't already, check out ctcmath.com. CTC is our sponsor, and I'm so grateful for them. Like I've said before, I use them and I pay for the subscription because we have used CTC for years, and it's a really great fit for our family. You'll learn more in the middle of this episode, but you can always check them out and thank them for sponsoring this content over at ctcmath.com. All right. Pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, get away from the kids for a minute, take some of that time to yourself so you feel more balanced, and let's get on with today's episode. Okay, so this question has come up off and on throughout the years, and it was just recently posed during a Q&A for the Learners Lab, the community that I manage for families who are homeschooling differently wired kids. And each month we do a group coaching session where parents can submit questions ahead of time, and I will tackle all of the questions that are pre-submitted. Sometimes we're on for an hour, sometimes we're on for 3, but I get through all of the questions that were answered. And I thought that the one that I'm going to read about today was a really great one to remind ourselves of the idea of showing ourselves grace and respect and courtesy and giving ourselves a little bit of a break, especially this time of year as we're wrapping up and doubt creeps in and all the other stuff. I thought it was a good reminder because it does come up again and again and again. As homeschooling moms, as homeschooling parents of quirky, differently wired kids, if you're like me and you homeschool and work, it comes up even more. So the question is about balance. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the question because I think that some of the phrasing was phenomenal. And I want you to think about it kind of as we go along here. So the question starts out, we speak so often about the needs of our gifted and our emotionally intense kids, but what about our needs? What about the things that we need to do to support ourselves, and what kinds of support systems should we seek out to help us navigate our homeschool life as parents? Now, the questioner goes on to ask about attaining a parental Zen-like state of mind to handle the meltdowns and the stamina of a college athlete to keep up with the intensity, and the curiosity and mind of a college professor to navigate all the whys and what ifs and questions that come at you all the time from your quirky, gifted kiddos, as well as the home management skills of someone like Martha Stewart, which just made me giggle, just that whole idea of taking on all of the personas of all of the experts in these different fields in order to be able to handle the stuff that comes along with raising neurodiverse kids. And she finishes off the question by saying, for those of us starting on our journey, and I want to add to her question, for those of us who have been in this path and on this journey and adventure for a lot of years, how do we stay balanced? What kinds of support systems do we have in place? What could we put in place to stay balanced? And how do we attain this level of care for ourselves as well as balance in all that we do as homeschool moms of very intense kids? Okay, so this is a really layered response, but first I want to break down the idea of balance because I think that idea is one of those damaging things, damaging weights, really, that we put on ourselves as homeschool parents and really as moms in general, but especially as homeschool moms, and then even more so as homeschool moms of neurodiverse kids. The thing is, there's no such thing as balance when it comes to parenting. And there's certainly no such thing as balance when it comes to homeschooling. Because here's the thing. Whenever we are saying yes to something, we're saying no to something else. We can't do it all, and we especially can't do it all simultaneously. So when we're really rocking something, that means something else is not being rocked as well at that moment. And we have to be okay with it. In order to sustain this adventure and this journey, we need to be okay with not doing everything all the time. So let me give you an example. If I'm really, really doing a good job of getting meals on the table, keeping the house clean, and I don't know, playing a board game with the kids each day, it means something else is getting left behind. It means that maybe we're just doing our kind of minimum viable day, as Pam Barnhill calls it, or our must-dos, as I call it, in our homeschool. Or maybe the kids are doing all their independent work, but we're not going on any field trips, or we're not getting a lot of other extras done. We're just doing the main core subjects. Because I'm spending time making sure all of the other stuff is done. And then maybe there are times when we are really killing the whole homeschool thing. We are working on projects, we're diving into interests, we're following rabbit trails and going to all sorts of different homeschool events and field trips, but we're not doing a great job of getting dinner on the table, or laundry is piling up. Because we're pouring our attention into something, that means we can't pour our attention into something else. Another example is when we were part of a homeschool co-op, which we're not right now. I've talked about this before. Our co-op didn't regroup after the pandemic, and we haven't joined or found another one that's a good fit for our family. And so we don't have that anymore. But when we did, I was teaching classes in the co-op. My kids were all going to co-op. We were getting up early and being gone for most of the day. In fact, it's very funny because as I'm recording this podcast, one of my memories on Facebook popped up from years and years ago. And my little 4-year-old at the time, Isaac, who is now 10, said, "Mom, why do mornings come so early?" This was in my Facebook memory. And I said, "I know, buddy, I'm not a morning person either, but we got to get going. We got to get ready for co-op." And he said, "But why don't we have a co-op that meets in the afternoons and takes a dinner break instead of one that meets in the morning and takes a lunch break? I'd rather just stay home and snuggle. Mornings are for snuggling on the couch, reading books, and cuddling up with mommies and sisters." And of course, I just loved that, which is why I shared it on my Facebook page. But the truth is that co-op days were long. They started earlier than we typically started, and we were exhausted when we got back home. And so it was kind of a joke with my pizza guy, the pizza delivery guy that worked on Thursdays, that, "Oh, you must have had co-op today," because pretty much every Thursday I ordered pizza. And he would ask the kids what they did in co-op, and he would ask me how the day was, and I would get my pizza all set up and we'd all eat, and I would do nothing but veg out for the rest of the afternoon or evening because I was so exhausted. And that's a perfect example of balance. I was not coming home from co-op and making a big elaborate meal, nor was I getting everything together and throwing things in the crock pot before co-op either, because I had a hard enough time wrangling myself out the door on time to get to co-op with all of the things I needed to teach my classes, let alone wrangle 4 kids out the door as well. And so we ordered pizza on Thursdays, and the stuff in our car from co-op didn't usually make it in the house right away. Maybe it took a couple days. Maybe it took an entire week. And then I was sorting through it again to try to find the things I needed for co-op the next day. This is how life works. And so we need to remember that our job isn't to do everything perfectly and everything even well all the time. Our job is to do the next best thing as homeschool moms of neurodiverse kids. Sometimes our days are going to be lopsided. Some days, some weeks, some months, some years, we're going to be on top of the housework. We're going to be on top of the meal planning. We're going to be on top of the homeschooling. But others, we're not. Other days, weeks, months, years, we're not going to be on top of those things. And we need to know that, kind of like it is when you are at the pediatrician and you're worried that your toddler is not eating enough. And your pediatrician says to you, don't worry about it. We don't measure a toddler's eating on a day-to-day basis. We measure a toddler's eating more along like a week-long basis, because most toddlers are grazers and tend to eat a ton one day and like hardly anything the next day. Or they get fixated on one type of food for a while and then they don't eat anything else for a while. And so this is absolutely normal, and we kind of want to take an average of what they're eating over the course of, a couple days or a week even, maybe even a month. And so we want to do the same thing with our parenting and with our homeschooling, because there will be some times when it's harder than it is with others, especially if you're parenting and homeschooling neurodiverse kids. Sometimes you might have a season where you're involved in a lot of different therapies. I want to take a minute and tell you all about CTC Math. CTC Math is our current sponsor of the podcast, and we are so grateful to them. But beyond that, it's the math program that I buy and use with my own kids all year long, and with my 14-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my 9-year-old. I love, love, love it, because for one low price, we get access to K-12 curriculum for all of the kids, which is fabulous when you've got neurodiverse kids, because some of your kids are really great at math and can accelerate through it very quickly and want to. And others of your kids may struggle with that. Remember, we've talked about asynchrony before on this podcast, and asynchronous kids are many ages at once. That includes academic ages. So I've got one kid in particular who loves the fact that I allow him to take the end of unit tests at the beginning of each new unit, and whichever concept he already understands and has already grasped, he can skip. Kind of feels like he's gaming the system, right? But my point is, why teach him something he's already learned? Why reteach and make him dislike the subject when I can focus on the gaps that he has in his math curriculum, math education, and move him forward? So last year, using this process, he finished a year and a half of math, and I didn't have to buy a new program, because when you subscribe to CTC, you get access to all of the levels K-12. And then one of my other kids who struggles a little bit with math was able to take the math in a very sequential way and is going through it basically one grade level at a time. It's perfect for them. Another one of my kids is a little bit behind where they may have been if they were going to a traditional school setting, because they've focused on other things. And so that particular child is able to go back a couple grade levels, brush up the skills they've missed, and then come back to the level that they're on when they feel confident in those skills. It offers the most supreme level of flexibility for a family who has asynchronous kids. I highly recommend you check them out if you're looking for a new math program, especially if you're looking for a math program for asynchronous kids, for gifted kids, or for kids in a family full of different abilities, because they have great prices for family subscriptions as well as individual subscriptions. They also have, which I think is absolutely amazing and so generous of them, a money-back guarantee. If you use the program and you aren't satisfied with it at all, then you just call them and they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. So you really don't have anything to lose, and you have so much to gain with the flexibility. I love, love, love it, and I am saying this as a user, as a parent who has switched from multiple different programs throughout the years to this program for all of her current homeschooling kids. Check it out, ctcmath.com. You will not regret it. When you're involved in a lot of different therapies and you're leaving the house on a multi-day basis across the week, you're not going to be able to keep up with a lot of the housework, or you're not going to be able to keep meals on the table that are long and simmering in a pot. You're not going to be able to keep up with all of the homeschooling that you had planned out in your Zen world of dreaming about what your homeschool was going to look like. And you need to give yourself a break, and you need to give your kids a break too, because none of us can do it all, and we're just going to experience burnout doing it all. I think that's the bottom line right there. And that's the thing that we need to remember. Okay, so parenting is hard. Parenting neurodiverse kids is really hard because they are atypical. They are different than the average child, the same age peers that they might encounter in a homeschool setting, a co-op, or a regular school setting or whatever. and they think about the world differently. They perceive the world differently. They behave differently. And so we're already parenting in a qualitatively different way than many of our friends. And so that's hard. That's harder than typical parenting, right? It's different than typical parenting. Now, throw homeschooling in the mix. Homeschooling neurotypical kids is challenging because you're still going against the norm. The easy thing to do is to throw our kids on the bus and send them away for somebody else to teach. Is it the right thing to do? No. It's not the right thing to do for everybody. Is it the right thing to do for some? Maybe. But it's not the right thing to do for you and me who are listening to this podcast. Not only are we homeschooling, not only are we parenting neurodiverse kids, but we are homeschooling neurodiverse kids. So a regular out-of-the-box curriculum that's lined up for us with all the different subjects according to a grade level is not going to fit for our kids because our kids are already thinking outside the box. They're already perceiving the world in a slightly different way. They're already experiencing their experiences different than their neighbor who's the same age as them. And so, just like getting to the bottom of what they're thinking and feeling on a given day, just like motivating them feels difficult on a given day, figuring out how they learn best and what they're going to learn across a year is going to feel different. It's why so many families, when they talk to me at a homeschool convention, ask me about curriculum, ask me about meeting their kids' needs in different places, because neurodiverse kids, especially gifted kids, are asynchronous. They learn in a nonlinear fashion. They're all over the place. They may be very advanced in one area and behind in another. Their behavior might be years below their level, their age level, whereas academically in some areas, their grade levels leaps and bounds ahead of where they should be. And then in others, they're right on track and on target. And so this makes it difficult to homeschool them. It makes it difficult to parent them. And so we're already set out to do something that's even more difficult than just regular, everyday average parenting. And everyday average parenting is hard. Everyday average parenting is a lot of work and impossible to balance because some days you come home from work as a normal, typical, everyday parent and you're exhausted or you're not feeling well. Or you just don't feel like cooking dinner. Now, take a kid who's home with you 24/7 and asks questions about 22 of those hours every day, and you're exhausted on a daily basis. And so sometimes you're not going to handle the meltdown with that Zen-like approach that you'd like to experience it with. You're not going to be able to stay calm in the face of whatever it is that's bothering your child. And you might need to step away and say, honey, I really want to help you with this. But right now, I need to step away so I can be calm when I talk to you about it. And then step away. And sometimes you're going to know exactly what to say in the moment of the meltdown to help your kiddo through it. And then other times, their meltdown is going to trigger you and you're going to melt down too. And you're going to have to come back to your kid later and apologize for the choices you made in your behavior. Because at that moment, the right choice was really difficult for you. And instead, you chose the wrong one. This is all good parenting. This is all good teaching because none of us can ever be perfect all the time. We need to cut ourselves a break. We need to let go of the idea that in order to be a good mom or a good homeschool mom, we have to do it all. And we have to do it all with perfection and grace at every moment of our day because it's just not attainable. And if we do that, if we approach our homeschooling life and our parenting life from that perspective that we have to be the one who can field all the questions, find all the answers, keep up with their intensity, handle meltdowns with grace and zen, and get all of the meals on the table and keep our house perfectly clean, we're going to set ourselves up for failure before we even begin. And let's face it, living is hard enough without putting our own failures and roadblocks right in front of us. The best thing we can do for our kids is show them that nobody's perfect and show them that we make mistakes and we pick ourselves back up with grace and courage and we apologize and we change our behavior and we do it better the next time. That right there is the best example we can set. I said a bunch of times this past convention season as I was talking to different parents because similar conversations kept coming up. I have said again and again this season that we are our kids' only example of what a healthy adult mom or dad, parent in general, looks like. We don't want our kids to see that we're afraid to admit mistakes because our kids are going to make mistakes as adults. And we want them to know right now that everybody makes mistakes, kids and adults. And the best people recognize their mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and apologize for their mistakes and grow. Learning doesn't stop when we reach adulthood. Mistakes don't stop when we reach adulthood. The best gift we can give our homeschooled kids, especially our neurodiverse kids, is to let them know that we can't completely achieve balance. We can't achieve perfection. We can make mistakes with courage and grace and apologize for them. We can continue learning long into adulthood, and we can do the next best thing in every situation we're in so that, like a toddler's eating, the average across the week or across the month or across the year or across the season is showing the best versions of ourselves. And so here's what I want you to remember. To the mom who asked this question, which I already addressed within the community. So check it out if you're looking for a community of support because we do this every month and we're constantly fielding questions and chatting with one another within the community during the month. But to the mom who asked this question and every other mom who has struggled with this idea that everybody else has it all together, remember to tell yourself, number one, that nobody has it all together all the time, that our goal isn't to be perfect all the time and keep all the balls juggling in the air. The key and the goal is to make sure we're only dropping balls that won't break or bruise and that we're doing the next best thing to keep our family whole, healthy, and happy. We're modeling what healthy adulthood looks like. We're modeling asking for help when we're out of balance. We're showing our kids that sometimes we do a really good job in one area and other things slide off for a little while and then we pick it back up and we do those other things really well again. And that it's okay to be lopsided because that all balances out in the end. And that's what true balance is. True balance isn't an everyday thing where you do it all well all the time. True balance is doing the thing you need to do most right now, the best that you can, and being fully present and invested in that thing, and then letting it all average out over the course of your day, your week, your month, your season, your year, and your homeschool in general. You've got this. You totally have got this, moms. And I'm right there with you. My kids are going to be eating a lot of cereal and frozen food over the next couple months. Why? Because I'm working on a book project. Super excited about this book project. I'm going to keep telling you more about it over the next couple months. But when I'm deep in a very, very big project like this, that means that I want to be all in when I'm homeschooling my kids. And I want to be all in when I'm taking them on field trips. And I want to be all in when I'm playing with them or talking to them. And then I want to set boundaries around my work time and be all in when I'm working on the project so I can make the most of the time that I have to work. And so they don't feel neglected because I've given them all that time in the other areas, which means I need help with laundry and housework and chores and cooking when I'm in the middle of a big project. And so I'll lean heavily on Instacart and other resources that will deliver food to me. I will order takeout more than I normally do. I will order frozen foods that the kids can pop in the oven for me. We'll use our air fryer and our Instant Pot liberally. And my kids will be just fine. And your kids will too. Be the best mom you can in the moment. Lean in heavily to whatever it is you're doing in the moment. And remember that balance is over the course of your life with your kids, not in the every single day. Okay, I'm so proud of you. You're a great parent to incredible, amazing kids. You're already doing fantastic things. Share this episode with someone who you think might need that reminder about what true balance actually is in parenthood and homeschooling. And let me know how you keep yourself grounded when it comes to the overwhelm and the comparisons and the feelings that you're not staying balanced and doing it all for your kids. I'd love to hear. There is a contact form over on the show notes for this episode, raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And you could also leave me a voicemail message. I'd love to hear from you. All right, we'll be back next week, same time, same place. Check out our sponsor, CTC Math, and pop over and check out the community. We're open right now to new members, and I'd love to have you join us. Have a great week. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.